In this essential series, we're going to be giving short, simple insights designed to help everybody navigate the real stuff. No fluff, just practical guidance so that all of you can move forward with some clarity. And as always, none of this stuff is going to save the world, but I can promise it won't make it worse. Welcome to Outsider Information. I am your host, Brandon, and your strategic partner here with OIAS. As always, if anything resonates, give a like, subscribe, and engage, not just here on YouTube, but on Instagram, and go check out the website. I think it's a pretty cool website. Drink of the episode is water, because we are talking about the essentials. Doesn't get more essential than this. If you're feeling extra fancy, drop a lemon wedge into it. Make yourself feel good. Before we jump in, read the bottom. This is not legal advice. If you have any situation that you have questions about your rights as an employee, please contact an attorney that specializes in employment law and work through it with them. This series is just designed to give folks, businesses, and employees a roadmap to get you on the right track to making sure things are where they need to be from a compliance perspective, or if you have questions that you can ask the right ones. This series, we're going to try to knock them all out in one day, so the drink of the episode will be the same. The outfit will be the same. This one, we are talking about leaves and leaves of absence. And what is a leave of absence? It is a prolonged duration in which somebody is away from work. Could be health, could be birth of child, could be any of those things, but leaves of absences in the workplace are there to be had. Okay? There are a couple different ones we're going to talk about. Federal, state, and then those that are provided by the company. They all balance with each other. Federal trumps state. State trumps anything that the company has. And if you have anything within your state law or company bylaws that enhance what exists above them, you are more than your right to give employees more. You just can't take rights away. But a couple of examples, right? From the federal side, you've got FMLA. That's the one that people hear about the most, but there are some misconceptions and some eligibility requirements. You've got USERRA, which is military leave. If you are active duty in the reserves and you get summoned by your branch of service to go somewhere, then you get put on USERRA. Some examples of state leave would be parental, school conference, and parental leave laws are the same, but they vary with some little nuances by state in terms of what is provided. But school conferences, sick and safe leave or sick and safe time is something that a lot of states provide in lieu or in addition to PTO. Some company leaves, personal medical leaves was something that we had at our organization that was for those who were not FMLA eligible. You've got bereavement leave if somebody passes. You've got voting leave. They've got things, bone marrow donation leave, jury duty leave if you're subpoenaed. It just depends on what your company may have in there in addition to what is required by the federal and state statutes that they exist under. All of this should be in your employee handbook if you are an employee and have questions. If you are an employer and this is not in your employee handbook, I would highly recommend having one drafted out, because not having this in there will put you severely out of compliance. All right. So where's all this coming from? I've done roles in HR. I have a doctorate in HR, and I have been on the operational side. So what I'm going to be giving you is purely from what I saw doing some of this work, why it matters, and again, just to kind of give you the roadmap of how this is going to help you get into it a little bit more. The leaves that I saw the most were FMLA, what we had for those who weren't eligible for FMLA, which is the personal medical leave, and then bereavement leave. They were all processed the same. The process was just slightly different. In my role when I was doing leave administration, the goal was to give clarity so that people understood what applied to them, how it all functioned together, and then how we were going to move forward so that they were able to, with some semblance of calm and clarity. Because if you're going on a leave of absence, outside of birth of child, it's usually not for something that somebody wants. They have to take care of something that is going to be inconvenient to them, both on a personal, potentially physical, and a financial level as well. In practice, it's really easy, but it is detailed. And again, I can't stress this enough. As an employee, know your rights, contact an attorney if you have questions, but also read your employee handbook. It should all be there. As an organization, this is a very heavy compliance piece where if you don't know it, you need to have somebody that does, because it can really be damaging to your organization, not just on a level where people view you negatively, but it can open you up to a lot of legal liability. The rules exist. Again, federal, state rules exist. You just have to follow them, and anything you have in your company should be able to do that. So we're going to just kind of go down. I'm not going to cover all these. That would keep us here too long, but just the main ones, all right? FMLA. That is the one that people ask the most questions about because that's the one that's most commonly known. It is the Family Medical Leave Act, and it is federally protected time. So that is where it comes in. But in order to get that federally protected time, the requirement you have to meet is you have to work within an organization for a year within the last 7, and you have to have accrued 1,250 hours of work time within that span as well. If you do that, you will likely be FMLA eligible, and that will be greatly beneficial to you going on a leave of absence. It just made it a whole lot clearer because that's a federal law. The duration of which is 12 weeks. You get a total of 12 weeks or 480 hours, whichever one is hit first. If you do not work a full 40-hour week, you will not get the 480 hours. You will get the 12 weeks according to your schedule, and that is just kind of how it works and rolls. It is not contingent upon being full-time. It is just an hours requirement. So if you are a full-time worker, you will easily hit 1,250 hours in a year's time. Where FMLA is really helpful is there are 2 options, continuous versus intermittent. That continuous FMLA leave or any continuous leave means you are going to be out for a set duration. That could be a week, could be a month, could be the entire allotment that you have if you are planning on taking something like a full parental leave. Intermittent is great because it allows you to piecemeal it. Where you have to use chunks of time with continuous, intermittent allows you to use FMLA down to the quarter hour. So let's say you've got health appointments, continued health appointments, you have a chronic condition. Intermittent FMLA can give you a reprieve from that, and it is still federally protected time. You can just parse it out a whole lot longer. Where FMLA is not as great is it does require the use of PTO. And even if you don't have PTO, you're still able to use FMLA, but you're not getting paid for that time. So it can be a little bit of a double-edged sword where you are getting the time that you need to heal, recover, but you are losing wages in the process. And you can see that happen in a whole lot of ways. I've got a lot of example stories that would keep us here too long, but it goes into why it's important to ration your PTO. Don't burn all through it in the event that you do need FMLA. But when you do go on FMLA, and we'll touch on a couple of pieces of this through the series to make sure that you protect yourself in a few other ways. Once you run out of hours of FMLA, FMLA no longer exists. Now it can be transitioned to a different form of leave if your company offers that, but that federally protected time does go away. Again, if you do have questions about your rights, as an employee, I would contact an attorney if you are concerned that running out of FMLA hours could potentially put you in jeopardy. So we're going to leave that there. The process that we went through when I was doing leave administrative work was very straight line. Right, I would get an alert that somebody was interested in talking about a leave. More often than not, people would ask about FMLA because they did know the eligibility requirements. So I would have to then determine whether or not you were eligible for FMLA. If you were, great, we progressed through that timeline. So I outline all the stuff that I just did. This is how it works. These are your rights, and this is what we are going to need, which is a medical certification document. That medical certification document, once requested, the organization has 48 to 72 hours. I want to say it's 72, but we'll give that range to comply with the ask. From there, the employee will then have 15 days listed on the MedCert to be able to get that back to the company before it expires. So it is structured in a timeline and a window. That documentation, once it is given back to you as an organization, you have up to 30 days to determine whether or not it's valid. You go through your vetting process, and then it goes from there. You can request additional documentation. We did not. Something that is very different, and this varies by organization, are the requirements for pregnancy. There are some that require a doctor's note for pregnancy, for birth of child in order to activate FMLA, some proof of it. We did not. I was not going to bring that conversation up, but there were some who asked why, because a lot of companies do it. So, but for me, I just kind of followed our process. How your organization is doing it can be completely up to you. All right. So, but the important thing is making sure that it is that up and down process of having the ask, complying by giving them the documents they need to get filled out, getting it back, and then making your determination within the 30 days. Once all that is done and you are able to assess whether or not this is good, we will say that it is. That person can go on leave and you are waiting for them to return back based off of the documentation. The documentation in this is the most important because it gives us as human resources or the person working in this role the ability to determine whether or not additional documentation will be needed, if there's any restrictions, how this is going to kind of coexist with the workplace as a whole. So that is there. I mentioned PTO earlier. From an organizational standpoint for continuous leaves, your organization may allow you to bank PTO. I do not like that FMLA burns through all of your PTO. I think there should be an option to save all of it and also just choose to go unpaid at that time. Organizations, though, do not want you to be able to take all of that time on leave and also still have a chunk of it back. So if your organization does offer a PTO bank, I never did necessarily recommend it, but I did say that if you do come back to work off of your leave, especially for when it was new parents, say that the kid has doctor's appointments, have an issue with childcare for a day, it was always good to have some PTO remaining in the event that you needed it upon returning from leave. So that is how I framed it there. But FMLA, honestly, really easy. It was the easiest part of the job. It was just keeping track of it all. But again, it's federal law. You just have to follow it. You go up and down, and you go from there. The next one, and this is where things got a little bit harder to navigate at times, was what we called was a personal medical leave. And just one thing on the FMLA can be used for family also. So if you've got a parent or somebody or a child who requires it, you can use FMLA to take care of them as well. It just makes things a little bit different with how we get the documentation. But coming in to the personal medical leave, what I just considered a general leave, was available to anybody in our organization. Again, this was unique to us. This is how we had it framed. Check your employee handbook to see how it works within your current organization. But this one was designed to only be used for personal health. So unlike FMLA, where you could use it for a child, you could use it for a parent, this one has to be used exclusively for you. And birth of a child did factor into it if you were the one who was giving birth to the child, right? If you were a father or a parent or not giving birth to the child with FMLA, you can still take FMLA as it does allow for tending to the birth or adoption of a child. Personal medical leave in this instance was very black and white. And it did give people what they needed. You qualified on day one, and this is where a lot of state law and company law kind of factored in. But the general rule that we followed was it mirrored FMLA in the duration of what we were, I guess, using as the baseline template. So at the very minimum, we would let you max out the 3 months of personal medical leave mirroring FMLA, and then we would go from there. Potential gaps that come into this, though, really do follow into employment law and what the ADA is. That is going to be another topic that we are going to cover. I would generally say that these are continuous leaves. We did not do an intermittent personal medical leave mirroring FMLA, but there is potential there to do it. And if you do something of the sort, you're going to have to answer a lot of questions as to, well, what's the point of FMLA and is there anything different if somebody were to do this? So again, really work with your state laws there. Have a really tight compliance legal team to make sure you don't dip into anything there. But the process in this sense was the same in that we would require documentation. It just wasn't through a med-cert. Somebody would say that they have a surgery planned, and I would just ask a couple of questions. Okay, do you have a date? Do you have this? This is what we require, and then we get the documentation. Once the date shows up, I would confirm that they were out that day, and then we would put them on leave in the system. Additionally, it can be continued off of FMLA. So let's say you have a procedure, you run out of FMLA, and then you still needed about 2 weeks off. It would transition from FMLA to a personal medical leave in our system. Again, this is how we were doing it. Your organization may do things slightly different, but there was that option in place so that you could still take care of what you need to take care of in the time that you were going to be gone. If it continued to extend, we would start to have those discussions of what this could potentially look like. But for the most part, being covered under one of these two usually got people the thing that they needed, and then we were able to progress from there. All right. So that's the two. The third one that I want to talk about is bereavement leave. This one is dicey because it's a company-specific policy a lot of the times of how they apply it. And even with that, it's not applied the same way each time. So how we had it was it is for a parent, grandparent, spouse, child, or in-law that kind of fit within those things as well. The problem is, how do you legislate family, right? What are you doing with that? And are you checking every single time? That was a question that I had because I didn't care, right? It didn't matter for me, but I do know what the employee handbook said. And when you have somebody saying that their aunt passed away and I need 3-5 days, whatever the policy was or is for your company, to go to the funeral and grieve, you're stuck in a spot where it says, okay, we understand that this person may have been meaningful in this life. Maybe they played a huge role in raising them like they did a parent, but they're the aunt and they're not a mother. What do we do? And I don't have that answer for you, except to say make sure your policy allows either for some wiggle room or just have a blanket policy that allows people to take bereavement leave. But if you have guidelines in there and don't follow them, again, that gray area can put you into a little bit of a mess. So that's it there. The duration, typically 3 to 5 days, was what it was, depending on the person. It was paid, and it doesn't really cross with FMLA or a personal medical leave unless we're talking about maybe the death of a child, death of a family member, and you are going to be seeking mental health services, or you need something along those lines. So it can cross there, where we've had people who had somebody pass away, maybe it was a miscarriage, and they took a little extra time as well, and they were getting treatment through FMLA. Like, it can be massaged in that way if you are going to do it. No real ADA implications necessarily with bereavement leave, unless you are factoring in, again, that mental health piece where somebody may be taking additional breaks during the day. These are things that we saw, and also things that we will talk about and cover a little bit more in depth as well. Okay. But again, the process is really the same. You are making the request. We are just processing it. We are submitting it. And that is really how it goes. And that's really it, right? Kind of getting close to finishing this one up. We're going to touch on these topics, but there is a cross-section of benefits that comes with leaves that we're going to touch on a little bit in a different essentials part of this. The documents are going to be the most important thing because it's going to tell us whether or not there are restrictions, how long you're going to be out. It just helps us move forward with some clarity, and then we can assess all the information there. Once your leave begins, how I phrase it to everybody is work doesn't exist. You take care of yourself. Once you return, that is when things kind of come back to normal. Okay? Questions to ask and keep in mind as an organization: do you know the law? Are you in compliant? Because if you're not, you're opening yourself up to some potential jeopardy. Do you have somebody who is dedicated in this role? I would recommend that you probably should have a dedicated team that does this, or person that does this, because just having an HR generalist do this job could have some things fall through the crack and, again, open you up to some legal jeopardy. Are you compliant as an organization? Again, make sure you are. Make sure you're consistent with your processes and the messaging, because it can create problems. And really understand that people are not exploiting leave policy. You might get a couple here and there. I did, and we snuffed it out and we denied the leave. But for the most part, people are going on leave because they need it. So if somebody comes to you and they're asking questions and they're trying to get the information, give it to them, ask for the documentation, go from there. All right? That's all you got to do. As always, nothing here is going to save the world, but if it does help you and makes things a little less crazy, that is what it is here for. So as always, give a like, subscribe, and engage if anything here resonates, and we will see you in the next one.